For most of modern history, writing happened in stable places. Desks, offices, tables. You sat down to write. You had space. You had time. Errors were inconvenient, but manageable. You crossed them out. You rewrote sentences. Writing was deliberate, and responsibility was clear. If something was wrong, it was yours. That balance broke when writing left the desk. Suddenly, people wanted to write while standing, while walking, while commuting. Messages moved from paper to pockets. The problem wasn't style. It wasn't clarity. It was speed, accuracy, and space. Writing became mobile before devices were ready for it. Early mobile phones weren't designed for text. They inherited numeric keypads from telephony, 12 keys, built for dialing numbers, not expressing ideas. Each key had to represent multiple letters. Ambiguity was baked into the hardware. Writing wasn't misunderstood. It was physically constrained. In the 1990s, typing a message meant effort. You pressed keys multiple times to get a single letter. You waited for cursors to move. You corrected mistakes character by character. Speed mattered. Battery mattered. Mistakes were expensive. Texting wasn't casual. It was labor. Errors weren't just annoying. They slowed conversations. They broke flow. They made devices feel unreliable. The faster people typed, the worse the system behaved. The better the user, the more fragile the experience became. Something had to absorb that friction. The people who stepped in weren't writers. They were engineers, telecommunications specialists, compression experts, statisticians. Their job wasn't expression, it was throughput. One company would shape this shift more than most: Strategic Communications. Strategic came from a world of constraints, limited memory, slow processors, strict performance requirements. They worked on systems where waiting was failure, where hesitation meant dropped connections. Their mindset wasn't semantic, it was statistical. When ambiguity appeared, the system had to choose quickly. Not correctly, just efficiently. These phones didn't have keyboards. They had number pads. Each number represented several letters. To write a word, you pressed the same key again and again, or you didn't. Instead, you typed a sequence of numbers. The phone tried to guess the word you meant based on that sequence. Ambiguity wasn't a mistake. It was unavoidable. That guessing system had a name. It was called T9, short for text on 9 keys. It didn't ask what you meant. It didn't wait for confirmation. It chose the most common word for that number sequence and moved on. Frequency decided. Speed won. T9 reduced friction. Messages became faster. Errors dropped. Typing scaled. For the first time, mobile writing felt viable. The system didn't understand language, but it didn't need to. It solved the immediate problem. But something subtle changed. The system began choosing before the user finished. You could override it, but most people didn't. Not because they agreed, because correction took effort. Decision-making quietly moved away from the human. People didn't resist the system. They adapted to it. They learned which words triggered corrections, which spelling slowed things down, which structures were accepted faster. Over time, writing became anticipatory. You didn't wait to see what the system would change. You wrote in ways that avoided friction. Language shifted quietly, not because anyone asked it to, but because resistance felt inefficient. As mobile texting spread, the system disappeared into the background. Millions of messages turned into billions. People no longer noticed how words were selected, only that messages arrived faster. The infrastructure became invisible, and once something becomes invisible, it stops being questioned. Success erased curiosity. Speed replaced reflection. Eventually, the original problem faded. Hardware improved. Screens grew larger. Memory stopped being scarce. Typing no longer required compromise, but the logic didn't reset. The solution stayed. Like QWERTY, it survived the conditions that created it. Not because it was optimal, because it was already everywhere. Touchscreens changed how people interacted with devices, but they inherited the same assumptions. Correction didn't disappear. It moved earlier. Suggestions appeared mid-thought, before sentences were finished. The system no longer reacted to writing. It participated in it. The interface shifted from tool to collaborator. At some point, writing stopped being generative. You no longer formed sentences from scratch. You evaluated options, approved suggestions, adjusted predictions. The words still appeared under your name. But the act changed. Creation slowly turned into selection. Authorship became less explicit. The gain was speed. But speed always has a hidden price, because the system doesn't just fix typos. It quietly pushes you toward what it expects. Shorter sentences, safer words, fewer risks. Not because you chose to write that way, because that's what gets accepted faster. Over time, you stop fighting suggestions. You stop correcting tone, and your language becomes smoother, more predictable, less personal. Modern systems feel different. More data, more confidence, more authority, but the underlying logic hasn't changed. They still rank likelihood. They still optimize frequency. Scale didn't replace the model. It amplified it. Autocorrect was never designed to understand meaning. It was built to compensate for limits, hardware limits, human limits. Meaning was never the target. Efficiency was. That decision shaped everything that followed, and it still does. If writing slowly turned into choosing between options, then something fundamental shifted. Not suddenly, not violently, one suggestion at a time. The system didn't take language away from you. It made decisions feel lighter, easier, until choosing replaced thinking. And the words still appear under your name, but at some point, the sentence stopped being entirely yours.